Yo, Mana Squad, Into the AM is back with their summer collection of graphic tanks and tees to help you look good and stay cool this summer for all of your summer activities, including Magic the Gathering, Commander, EDH, maybe Draft, Commander, and maybe there's other things, but mostly Magic-related activities. You're going to look good while you feel good, and there are so many things to stay on theme this summer. I'll be fighting through my first Arizona desert summer this year, so you already know the prickly palette graphic tee is the perfect way for me to stay cool, look good, and stay on theme while I wander through the wasteland. And maybe you're trying to be out in nature this summer, get your nature vibes on, be one with nature and all that. Well, the Tree of Life tank is the perfect way to look good while you stay on theme. And y'all already know this is the summer of Modern Horizons 3. There are Eldrazi running around everywhere, and so you know you gotta rock the gleaming octo graphic tee, because with all those tentacles, what are Eldrazi but giant octopi with the power of friendship? And if you use the link on the screen below, you can go ahead and get an additional 10% off on top of the 30% for the 4th of July sale. So make sure you rock some Into the A in the summer, stay cool, look good, and as Kennedy the Heathen always says, something about space dripping, we don't know. Yo, welcome back to One More Mana. My name is Derek, and today I want to talk about my 5 favorite ways to power down some of your favorite Commander decks. And you might be wondering, Derek, I spend all my time in waking and sleeping moments. I dream about my decks, trying to figure out how to tweak them and optimize them. Why would I ever want to do this? And for me, it's a consistent thing I've seen, especially in the last few years with Commanders. There's so many new busted cards being printed into the format. Feels like more than ever, it's harder and harder to find that sweet spot of the pod you want to play in. If you have an LGS that you play at, if you have a friend group, most people have a very set group of people they play with, and it's so important that everybody kind of finds that happy medium where everyone is able to do the things they love most about Commander. Now, there's tons of resources out there on how to power up. If you're the person who's consistently not able to keep up in games and things like that, there's millions of resources out there, it feels like, to get up to where you need to go. But if you're the person who's running out too far ahead, if you're the person who's consistently winning too many games or really just being oppressive of the table with the way your decks are popping off, how do you power down without losing the soul of your deck, without making the deck not something that you love? It's really hard to, half the time, if you just take the most powerful stuff out of your favorite deck, why would you even want to play it anymore? And that's what this video is about, finding effective ways to power down your deck while still having it keep that kind of that magic that makes you love the deck to begin with. One of the things is, this is kind of a personal deck building belief of mine, and I'm really curious to know what y'all think, so definitely let me know. But I'm very strongly of the belief that you should kind of hold punches in the deck building process and not the process of playing a game. Now, obviously, sometimes you can't help this, but for me, I don't want to put all the most busted cards in my deck and then be playing suboptimally all game. That's just not fun. But it is super fun for me to put a bunch of suboptimal cards in my deck and then try to find the perfect play patterns and the most cutthroat way to play those. My favorite analogy is always my dream Commander pod is people throwing a bunch of pool noodles into their Commander decks and then savagely trying to beat each other with them. And it creates a lot more, for me, interactive games, swingy games, and that's where you find the weirdest rule interactions and some of the more corner case cards that you wouldn't see in more optimized decks. So at number 5, my 5th favorite way to power down your Commander deck is going to be to run more tap lands. My favorite thing about this kind of idea for it is that there's a huge spectrum on how many tap lands you can run. You can go fully optimized, everything comes into play untapped with fetches, duels, everything like that. And honestly, at this point, you can probably run a deck with almost exclusively tap lands between a lot of the new MDFCs and guild gates and all those types of things. It's wild how many there are in the format now. And one of the coolest things about this is, especially for more aggressive decks, you can basically hand pick the speed you want your deck to go at without having to mess up your favorite cards in the deck. If you run a deck with every single land tapped versus 0 tap lands, the difference in power is going to seem insanely different. You're essentially skipping a turn playing only tap lands versus coming in, hitting the ground running, just going. One of the coolest things about this is, you can go 20% tap lands, 70% tap lands, whatever that weird thing is, and find that happy medium and tweak it until you get exactly where you want to be. My favorite example of this is my Indoraptor deck. My Indoraptor deck is a very aggressive deck, and if I play a fully optimized mana base, I could probably pop off by turn 5 or 6 for me, which is very early game, and be in a position to take someone out. And that's just not what I wanted the deck to do. So what I was able to do is replace about a quarter of that mana base, put in suboptimal tap lands, and make it to where if I do pop off and get to that game state, it's less consistent. So that way, every game, people aren't rolling their eyes at my 15-15 commander on turn 5. but it also allows me to stay on theme and really just fill out the vibe of the deck better. One of the coolest things with every set having common duels is you get some weird stuff and some cool synergy. So you can either pick the common duels from the plane that your commander's from, or the set that your commander's from, or in the case of my Indoraptor from Thunder Junction, you had to come into play, tap, deal a damage, and it has that whole non-combat damage theme on your lands. I love the options for that. I love the flexibility, and I think it is a cool way to increase the flavor of your deck and find a way to slow it down without having to take out any of your favorite cards. Number 4, and this is going to seem blasphemous, but just run worse counter spells. Like if you're in blue and you want counter spells as interaction, find some of the weirder ones. Look, at this point, back in the day, Force of Will, Pact and Negation were like the only 2 free counter spells that I know of. There's some weird other corner cases, I'm sure, but like those were the majority of them. And honestly, for a long time, being Force of Willed was like sort of exciting. It was like, do they have the one card they can use? Because even Pact and Negation is dangerous, especially in a game of Commander. If someone packs and someone blows up their mana rocks or strip mines them or something, they could just lose on it. So there's a risky play, and that 5 mana is a lot. But with, you know, you have the Force of Will or do not. Like that was a moment of like, but now there's how many free? We have Flare of Denial, Force of Negation, Fierce Guardianship with the Force of Will, and all these like. It's gotten to the point now where like you can just run so many free interactive spells in Commander. It's not clever anymore. Like it's not tricky. It's just there. It's so easy now in Commander to just make yourself essentially untouchable if you just want to run all those cards. At least for me, it's not exciting. There's nothing like, oh my gosh, this just happened. It's just half the time I see people casting these free counter spells, they're rolling their eyes at themselves. It feels like it's just too easy to get to. So one of the ways I think that you can power down is run thematic counterspells, run weird counterspells, run counterspells you would have never otherwise thought of. One of my favorite versions is like, if you're in a graveyard deck, yeah, you could run your Fierce Guardianship and just have protection and not have to worry about anything. But why not run Logic Knot, which is a delve counterspell that is just not a great card. But if you're sitting there at a table and someone Fierce Guardianships you, you're not gonna remember that. You're gonna have an eye roll and move on. If you go to cast a game-winning spell and someone starts delving 8 cards for a Logic Knot, it's a much more memorable moment. If you're running a Grixis deck, let's say I love Cedrus. Cedrus the Trader King, one of my favorite cards. Why are you gonna run your Force of Denial or Flare of Denial, whatever? Why not run Swerve? It's got the flavor of it. It's got some story related to Grixis on the card. And you're probably going to still have this moment of being able to protect what you're trying to do. One of the things that I really have learned with having interaction and counterspells and trying to find my happy medium for these is sometimes not having the answer and not having the perfect response and not having all of the protection just makes it that much more exciting when you do. And I think especially if you're playing a deck that's a little bit more powerful than everyone else's, give them chances to interact. Don't play this commander that's going to jump out to a lead, get all scary, and then make it impossible to do anything. Find these weird corner cases and make it more of an interactive fair fight at the table, and I think everyone's gonna have a much better time. Now at number three favorite way to power down a deck is going to be replace, if you're very, very ramp heavy, like fast mana heavy, replace it with what I like to call velocity card draw. There's so much fast mana in the format now, and I've noticed, I think like a lot of non-games come from people not realizing the impact of fast mana. There's so many games I've played where people play a deck that the commander might not be the most threatening, that the strategy might not be, but they just so happen to have all these fast mana pieces in there. It's like, oh, well, my commander's 6 mana, I need it. You don't need it. That's the first piece of advice. But 2, fast mana can lead to more non-games, and for a variety of reasons. Because in my experience, if you're running the most efficient, just all the 2/1/0 mana rocks possible, so many games, you hit the density of them, we're almost guaranteed to have it early. It's not a surprise anymore. It's, oh, turn 1 Soul Ring, Mana Crypt, Jewel Lotus. Like, if you have enough of those effects in the deck, you're going to have them in your opening hand. So you have one of 2 things happen. Either that player pops off and just pub stomps the table, and everybody kind of rolls eyes. It's like, okay, let's just get another game we really didn't get to play. Or you have the other effect of, because you're playing so much ramp, you're going to run out of cards to play. So the one person ramps like crazy, dumps their hand, becomes this huge threat, has nothing left. Everybody at the table is annoyed by this, so they all team up on that person. That person's now annoyed and not having fun because they have no cards left to play, and it just turned into a situation where everyone is miserable. So I think one of the best things to do is replace some of these just OP type ramp cards, all the Jeweled Lotuses and Mana Crypts and Mana Vaults and all these things, and even in Jeska's Wills in some cases, and start running, again, what I like to call that velocity card draw. So like your Read the Bones, your Sign in Blood, your Chart a Course, your Faithless Looting, cards that are either card neutral or put you up a card, or even in Faithless Looting, I guess, put you down a card, whatever it is, and lets you get through your deck sooner. Basically, you're going to see more cards, you're going to always hit your land drops, you're going to see more pieces of your deck, but you're going to move at a more stable pace. You're essentially giving up that explosiveness of just popping off and replacing it with more and more consistency. And I found decks that are potentially a little bit too powerful. If I just go, instead of running 15 pieces of ramp and 10 pieces of card draw, cutting that down below 10 ramp spells, going way up on those little incremental card draws, and I have so much consistency with the deck. I'm always doing my thing, and I'm taking my time to get there. It's just, I feel like I never have non-games where I do that in decks, and if you're seeing yourself pop off way too fast, give that a try. You might even find yourself having more fun with the deck over time. Now at number two, this is probably my personal favorite, but I don't think it's necessarily the most universal. It's going to be to play crossovers from other formats. If you have a deck in a certain color combination that's trying to do certain things, and you find it being too powerful, cut some of the staples for what you might see as a staple from another format. So if you're playing like Spellslinger deck and it's just way too efficient, take out one of your like high impact cards, put in a Delver of Secrets. Is it good? No. But if you love Delver in a different format, if you're a Legacy Delver player, you have that cool connection piece in your Commander deck. If you're someone who used to love old school Jund, and we saw this with the new Jund Commander Precon, if you have a graveyard deck that's just popping off too much, throw in a Tarmogoyf. Like, is it going to be great in Commander? Probably not, but it's that connection point to another format that you love. I think one thing I feel like that I don't see as much in Commander, I love it just being the home for reliving experiences that you can't have anywhere else, whether it's a modern deck that's out of favor, a standard deck from back in the day that its pieces got banned, or even limited decks. And a more well-known version of this, and my personal favorite, is the Spider Spawning draft combo from Innistrad. I've been lucky enough to be able to draft Innistrad once. Most people, if you're getting into the game more recently, unless they do like a full remaster, you're probably never going to get a chance to draft Innistrad. And even if you do, the chances of you being able to get the spider spawning pieces of this legendary deck are rare. This is an experience very few people at this point are going to be able to draft and get through. But you can just play it in Commander. So I have a Sidisi spider spawning deck, and instead of putting more powerful mill and Simic cards and doing all the busted stuff, I run literally just every common, uncommon, random piece, Runic Repetition, Tracker's Instincts, all that in my Sidisi deck. I basically took every card you'd want to draft at Innistrad and that you'd hope to have and just put it into a Commander deck so I can experience that over and over and over again. And I think finding these weird things, whatever connection to any format you have, whether it was your first draft you ever did, whether it was your first pre-release, whether it's an old modern deck that you played when you were a kid, whatever it is, find those connection points, bring them into Commander. It's going to potentially power down the deck, but it's also going to let you have those like nostalgic, awesome experiences that make the deck more fun to play regardless of how powerful what you're doing is. Now, my favorite way to power down your deck, and this is essentially a tie between 1 and 2, but I had to pick one, is to swap out your Commander for a less powerful, generic value engine type thing, or potentially make your deck just non-Commander focused. This is something that I think there's so many Commanders printed the last few years that do everything for you, that ramp you, draw you cards, there's certain Commanders that it doesn't matter what you do in the 99, it's busted. If someone's playing a Coma, honestly, I don't care what their deck list is, that player needs to get aggroed out because it's just gonna take over. If someone's playing a Corvold, like, it kind of doesn't matter what's in the 99, it's such a powerful value engine of a Commander. If it sticks around too long, you just can't keep up with it. And if you find yourself in a position where you are trying to power down your deck, trying different things, and you're still popping off, it might just be that you have one of these like 2024 Commanders that does everything for you. It doesn't mean you need to play like a terrible Commander. Like, I think a lot of Corvold decks could do great switching over to Prosh. Don't do the food chain combo stuff, but like, you can still do a lot of the sacrifice synergies and all those things. Still have a really powerful deck, but not have a deck that's just an inevitability you can't interact with. If you're someone who runs a Marin, for example, which used to be one of the boogeyman from back in the day, I don't think it's even that scary. But if you are in a meta where Marin's a boogeyman, try running like an old Stick Fingers instead, where it's just kind of a generic Golgari card that just, you can fill your graveyard, do stuff, but it's not this inevitability of value that you can't keep up with. There's so many, Coma I mentioned as an example. If you're someone who wants to do this weird Simic stuff, there are so many interesting old Simic legends before Simic was rampant card draw that you can get the kind of that structure for, that doesn't need to be a Commander that just gets eye rolls every time it hits the table. And there's so many options. And another kind of offshoot of this, and it's something that Ken is one of the best players I've ever met in doing, is building decks that have nothing to do with your Commander. Ken does a great job of just having a deck that functions independent and uses the Commander as like a distraction. And I honestly think that could help a lot too. If you have a strategy you love and it's just a generic strategy, try not making the deck commander focused. Don't lean on having this constant value engine in the command zone, and just try to build a 99 card singleton deck with kind of a representative at the top. I have a Cedrus the Trader King deck that I absolutely love, and I probably cast him like a third of the games. It's just a Grixis Reanimator deck that has Cedrus kind of as like the thematic face of it. And it's so much fun, and it's cool to not have that kind of crutch of your commander at all times and this crutch of knowing what's going to happen. It keeps the games varied, and honestly, I think it's one of the best ways to play the strategies you love, play the cards you love, without having this just powerful inevitability always sitting there staring you down. Because at that point, you really can't sandbag. You can't act like it's not there. Everyone sees it. And changing that up might be one of the most effective ways to get your deck where you want it to be. That's going to wrap it up. I hope you enjoyed this week's video. Let me know in the comments below if there are some other ways that you like to power down decks, or maybe tweak decks to find a better spot for it. I really am curious to see what y'all's favorite ways are. Make sure you remember to hit up that link in the description below for Into the AM, all the July 4th stuff going on. So many exciting things to come. As always, a huge shout out and love to the patrons. We appreciate y'all so much. Until next time, stay petty.